Hello, and welcome back to Deserve 2020, a better tomorrow today. This session, I think, is going to be really awesome for you guys. We're going to have a conversation as a family here at the kitchen table. The title of the session is HIV and the Family, a kitchen table talk. So what we want you to do is engage in conversation now in the comments section of this video. Okay, we'll be talking here, and many of us will be engaging with you in the chat. So we want you to begin to engage once we start chatting in the comment section. Remember that, because we're waiting on you. That being said, I'm going to begin introducing myself, and I'll have everybody introduce themselves thereafter. I'm G. Allen Battle, the conference director and founder of I Deserve Inc., and this is
Jacqueline Battle of Jacqueline Enterprise in Huntsville, Alabama.
She's also my mommy. This is
Mine too. Hello, my name is Barnett Stewart. I'm the pastor at College Hill Seventh-day Adventist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee.
This is
Hello, my name is Chauncey Blackery. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, and I'm a life coach with a mindful family.
okay, and family we have.
Hi, I'm Diane DeMore. I am from Savannah, Georgia, and I work for the Department of Public Health.
Wonderful. So we'll be engaging with one another. Feel free to sit back, grab some popcorn, get your glass of water, some sweet tea, your favorite beverage, and listen in and begin some of your own conversations there in the comment section. All right. So I'm going to start with the initial question. We've been asking it all week. Why should we continue this conversation surrounding HIV prevention and care? And why is it so important to be talking about it in 2020? Who wants to take that? Who wants to jump in
I believe we should continue because in some places the conversation's never started.
there? Okay.
So the reality of it is that until a group and a culture is created for comfort, then the reality is it does not exist for so many other people that need to be comfortable in that conversation, from testing to care to help to etc. So education, what do you do when someone is, someone isn't, that entire experience, or even getting a chance to know. A lot of people don't even know where to get the test from. They think that it's an exclusive test that you must go to a specialist or epidemiologist, and the truth is, you be at one of your local clinics.
Good point. There's a point. Anybody else want to jump in?
I agree. So many people lack information. So many people are ill-informed. We have to continue the conversation so that they'll get the necessary information to inform their community and create a broader network of information.
I agree as well, and also to break some of the stigma so we can have a conversation about HIV and AIDS, and also to keep educating the community because some people think HIV and AIDS are the same thing, and it's not.
Can you break that down just a little bit for
Please
us?
break that down.
Well, HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. So a lot of people think HIV and AIDS are the same thing. Like when someone, like I had because somebody else, they come to the clinic, wanted an AIDS test. We don't give an AIDS test, we give HIV. It's HIV testing, you're being tested for HIV. So just keep educating the community and so we can have these conversations so people will know the difference.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what you're saying is for those of us who really need to have a breakdown
Right.
of information, is if a person has HIV virus, that creates an environment for them to possibly be susceptible to AIDS. It depends on certain factors, is that correct? But that doesn't mean that they have AIDS.
Okay. One of the ways that I like to put that, and Chauncey, you may have a better input on it, is that HIV is the virus. AIDS is the condition that one becomes susceptible to if we don't take care.
Correct.
With that being said, it just went so smooth, I'm enjoying you guys already. That being said, Diane pointed out the fact that oftentimes stigma is a barrier to conversation. I've noticed that in so many families. I've been lucky, blessed, favored, however you want to call it. I come from a family where we talk about everything. It actually gets a little under her skin sometimes because she did not come from a family where they talked about everything.
Yeah, we talking about nothing.
But my dad comes from a family where they talked. And so one of the things that he brought to the household or to their union was, we're gonna talk. My mom brought to the thing was, we're gonna talk real. Because I didn't get to do that, so that's what we're gonna do. And it works. And so me and my siblings, we were blessed to be able to have real conversations with their parents. So when I tested positive, my hesitation with telling my family right away wasn't because, ooh, they're gonna be upset. I just had to work through my own process of being able to cope with that and not, once I was able to cope with it on my own, it was easy for me to go to them and say, hey, this is what's going on. These are the measures and the steps that I'm aware of that I need to be taking. As you know, I previously volunteered and worked as an advocate in this area, so I'm aware of this, and we'll get more information. Would you guys like to come along and get some more of that information? All of them were like, yeah, let's go. They came to my doctor's office, my family, sat down, at their conference room table, and my doctor sat down with my family and educated them. For a long time, I thought that's what families did. I didn't know that families are having conversations like this at the kitchen tables.
So what do you say to a family that doesn't have a household with both parents? Today we have a lot of households that just have single family homes with just a mother that is there. And then you have homes that there's just a father that is raising their children. So how do you bring a family like that together to have a conversation at the table? Because most single parent homes, they don't sit at the table and talk.
That's real. People don't sit at the table and have kitchen table talk. They're not just sitting down for dinner.
Right.
Most of them sit down and have a conversation. They're working
jobs.
to keep their family together. Yeah.
But they're normally doing that because their main concern is their children. That's their main focal point, even in families that are not together, not every family, but in general, the main focus are the children, so.
And survival.
And survival.
Yeah.
And survival.
Because I'm going to say the main reason why we don't talk about it, or even when it is brought up, is like to don't have sex. And it's usually as a deterrent to keep us from getting pregnant or having that road of conversation versus, hey, look, after it's done, this is what happens when you contract this or when you get that or whatever that is. And that conversation has been like totally hijacked by the movement of I want to keep my child abstinent or, celibate or a virgin as long as possible. Like it's not being brought up to bring this education.
But that to me is a cop-out because I don't even think it's real. I don't even think it's realistic. And I think sometimes people can avoid the difficult conversations by declaring them all out of balance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I grew up in a very conservative Bible Belt town, and I heard that abstinence and just don't have sex, and it's almost like just don't do drugs. You know what I mean?
Well,
The reality is,
and the opposite is not very balanced either, because what I got was, I know you can't abstain, so I'm taking your birth control pills. There was no conversation. And I was 12.
So as a parent, because that's an excellent question. As a parent, coming from a home where you experience both of your parents, but not in the same home, I really feel like you could actually better answer her question of what would you say to that?
It's because the same general thought that because the child is the main focus, so everybody's struggling to make things work and to survive. If there was information to make it clear to parents that this is for your child's best interest, you can't see it now because you're trying to feed them, but it's for their best interest, so that you can have them for as long as you want to enjoy them and enjoy each other. If parents understand that, they'll do what they need to do to come together for their child, even if it has to be at separate intervals.
Right.
why does that even need to be said? Is it not obvious?
It's not obvious, not when you're in a single, I grew up in a single parent home. And their main focal point, like you said, is survival.
Yeah.
And that mother or father's main focal point is to make sure that they're doing what they need to do so that they can survive, so they can feed their child another meal, keep a roof over their head for another month. We're not even talking about years. We're not talking about planning for it's survival. My house was a little different, but this, it was still, she prepared for years to come for me, for college and what have you, but it was still survival. That's what it was. Even for my father, it was survival. But the moment they understood that it was for my best interest, they both agreed.
That's beautiful. So with that said, I know we have two parents at the table. What would you all say to a community of people who are trying to figure out how to just have conversations in general? Maybe it's not about HIV, maybe it's not about sexual health, but they're just trying to figure out ways to have those real conversations because they don't sit down to the table and have dinner anymore. They're not having movie nights, so they don't have that kind of time. What suggestion would you give to them to be able to create those spaces where their children can come to them and have real conversations, so they can go to their kids and really quiet and have real conversations? Is there a community that needs to be built? What do you all do?
I feel to Diane, because she's from a different generation, you probably have a,
Well, with me personally, I have two children. I have always talked to my children about everything. We talk about everything, especially with the jobs that I have had in the past. So
Touche.
I have actually, my children say I have terrorized them. Because I went from being a parole officer to public health. And just like my daughter and my son said, you're still telling us not to do this. You don't want us to go to jail, and you don't want us to have children before our time or whatever. So it's different for every parent. I guess you just have to find ways to talk to your children. Then here in Georgia, in the field that I work in, when you talk about abstinence, Georgia is an abstinence state only, so you only can talk about abstinence in the schools. So I have to think out of the box and be very creative when I go into the school system, because I can't talk about sex, I can't talk about condoms. So I have to find different ways just to figure it out, even though they're gonna ask the questions.
So you mean to tell me that even in our schools, we can't talk about?
and it wasn't
In Georgia.
It wasn't that way because
But I mean, that's
this was in Georgia.
Yeah, I
I'm
grew
from
up in Georgia.
Georgia.
After I
So they
graduated,
changed
they made
that.
that
I
change.
see.
But that's crazy.
It's
My.
crazy.
Because
Where did that stem from? I would love to know.
I know that answer, but I can't say it on camera. I went to school with his children.
Was it a religious entity? I would love to know.
I think it's from a political standpoint.
Yes.
Okay, I
It
remember
is.
when that happened. Okay.
Yeah. They were presenting that legislation prior to us leaving.
Yeah, I
So,
think it's
We were just getting ready to. I
It's
remember
now
to leave the
shifted
state.
to a county by county decision. It's a state mandate that is abstinence only, but they allow the counties and the school districts to make their own decisions.
Okay.
so the reality of it is, it seems like your question was when you don't have time, and your answer is you have to make time. Like there's no in betweens on when we can just all of a sudden choose and not choose when to talk about it, or if we have no relationship or time being invested in our kids, we can just drop it on like, hey, tell about HIV, hey, about all these STDs. You really kind of have to have a moment where you make it a constant relationship of time to bring those things up.
And do you mind me asking in regards to your parenting status, co-parenting and such, or if you're,
I grew up in a two-parent,
so you grew up in a two-parent home and now you are,
a single parent.
so this is coming from a single parent, you gotta make the time.
We have to make the time.
So she don't have the time. She's making it.
I make the time.
Okay. And was that the same story even from a two-parent home? Yeah, that's why I'm not a parent. I don't have to have nieces. I love them dearly, and we have very real conversations. My oldest niece calls me when she doesn't want to talk to her parents about certain things. I'm the one who she calls. She call me any time of day or night, but I'm not a parent. I haven't brought life into the world, so I don't necessarily know what that feels like, but I can only imagine because I watched you. You and Dad were both entrepreneurs. You ran multiple companies, you run multiple companies. You have 4 children, and we are all, though we're very similar, totally different. I can only imagine what that must have been like having those conversations, because you had to have the conversations with each one of us, and each one of us receives information differently. You have 2 children who receive information differently, they're not the same. You know, I can only imagine what that was.
And then you also have to look at, even if you don't talk to your children, they're gonna talk to somebody.
That's true.
If they don't feel comfortable coming to a family.
Playground conversations.
How do you
And I
all
like to
feel
hear
about
those,
that?
I like to hear those conversations from the kids,
Mm.
what do they hear when they're talking to other individuals. It's very interesting.
I love what you just said because I think that is a very smart technique for people, either parents or kids, who want to open the conversation. Because sometimes it can feel very defensive for a parent to all of a sudden come in your room and want to talk about their sex life or whatever. It might be a very safe tactic to use. What do your friends say, or what have you heard? That way, I'm not revealing anything personal about me or how I feel. You've just asked me to tell you what people are saying. And I think that's a very smart, I don't remember anybody saying that in this format before, but just thinking about strategies and techniques, because you know that's my thing. I think that might be a great, safe way for families who are even conservative. Say, well, what are they saying? What have you heard? I think that should
do that
be
because
publicized.
I work in this field.
Yeah.
So I have to find ways to talk to my kids and not be strict and not
You're
say
right.
you have to do A, B, C, and D because I work in this field.
Right.
So I find other avenues so we can be comfortable to have those conversations with them. I want to know what your friends are saying.
Right.
What are they talking about? So,
And you could probably even ask them, what are their parents saying to them or not saying to them? Or what do they wish their parents could talk to them about? What do they hate their parents talking to them about? That's very clever. And I wish I had heard that.
I know we'll be online.
I'm really thankful to hear this strategy. I'm gonna use it on my grandchildren.
Yeah, it's very clever. It's very clever.
I think I'm using it with my kids at church.
So let me ask you guys this question then. We've talked about why we need to continue the conversation surrounding HIV. How do we talk to our kids? How do we have the conversation as a family? What do we say to those people, they may not be children, they may be adults, who may not necessarily have biological family that they can go to have conversations to talk about their wellness, whether it's mental health, sexual health, personal relationships and such. How have you built your chosen family, your own personal community, your own personal safe space? Because even though we all have our families, some of us also have those safe spaces that may or may not include our biological families. How have you guys built those spaces?
Trust. And I know that sounds crazy because you're like, wait, how do I trust somebody with this information that I either A, don't know because I'm going to a clinic, or B, just getting to know for the first time. But the reality of it is trust. I think one of the greatest things that I've discovered is being able to trust a relationship, that people have been there for you for other things. This one thing won't drive them away. As much as if I go to a clinic, trust that you ain't the first one. They wouldn't have a whole clinic for you to be the first one. Or if they have a specialist, you're not the first one that they need to create a whole government $50,000 job for or $30,000. Anyway, the point is that you ain't the first one. You know what I mean? And that because of that, you are not different. You're just another normal in a different community. You know what I'm saying? Or added to a community that already exists. And making sure that we stop the isolation of making you feel like, oh, I'm the first one in my family, nobody else understands, or nobody else will. No, trust the relationship you already got. Mama is mama. If she's a jerk, then she's gonna be a jerk. But if you have somebody in your context that is, warm, loving, they still gonna be what they're gonna be. And making sure that you can have that forward, awkward conversation because of the level of trust that you already have in the relationship. Well, the other side of it is that, if we go to a specialist, we're not the first ones. And I can just say that, from my personal experience.
but as professionals, though, we're gonna have to learn how to be conducive to everyone's feelings. Because a lot of people don't like going to a clinic.
True.
Because they feel that they're being judged.
True.
So,
And not
like with me personally,
True.
with my clients and patients, I've grown so a rapport with them that they trust me. So it's all about trust and not judging them, and also being a listening ear. So if you have places that just want to get you in and get you out and don't want to listen, so you're gonna have to, doctors and clinicians they're gonna have to change the way they see patients.
But why is it such a assembly line with that? Is that because they're overloaded or is it underfunded? Like, what is that assembly line?
I mean, there could be a lot of things. It could be funding. staffing.
Production, because you still gotta collect.
And some people have preconceived
Right.
conceptions and they pass that on.
And proper training.
Proper training.
A lot of these times you go to clinics and they receive training, but it will include cultural competency-ish, like the title of the session will be cultural competency, but it'll be like 3 slides. And it won't be very much information, you know? Or the people who need to be culturally competent would not have been included in the creation of the class.
Right.
So now you have information, but it's not the complete thing.
Right.
I want to go back. You mentioned something. You said, you gotta know who you have already and trust the relationships that you've already built and recognize what they are for what they are. You said mama may be a jerk, but she's mama, and so you go to mama understanding who she is. And I think that's such a good point. A lot of times when we're trying to build communities and build relationships, and when we're trying to create spaces and families, because a lot of us don't have those families, we go to them with these preconceived notions of how people should relate to us, not realizing that they have their own personalities,
Right.
they've got their own preconceived notions,
so true.
they've got their own thoughts and their own ideals.
Yes.
When we go to people authentically, for instance, Diane was previously my supervisor in the Coastal Health District. She doesn't, she works for the state of Georgia, and when I was there, she was my supervisor. And prior to getting there, I believe one of my coworkers at the time probably told her, he's a straight shooter, but he also told me, she rough. But then I get with her and I realize she's one of the most gentle people I've ever met in my life. But you gotta understand who she is. And she took the time to understand who I am. And now we don't work together professionally in that entity, but as you can see, we continue to work together because we now have a rapport and a relationship because we took the time to get to know how we interact with people and how we interact with one another. And I think that's how you build those families. Like even with my dad, I don't talk to him the same way that I talk to my mom. He and I have real conversations. My mom and I have real conversations. But when I enter those conversations, I realize who my father is. I realize what his preconceived notions are. But I also realize that everything he's saying to me is being filtered through the fact that he loves me. That he wants the best for me.
Sure.
So if I'm sure that you love me, you want the best for me, I'm not going to take anything that you say to me as malice, or I'm not going to hold resentment because you're ignorant of some information. I'm going to recognize that, hey, you're saying this to me, you're giving me this information because you care for me. I'm going to take from it the good that I can take from it, because if you said it to me, you were trying to impart something good. Even if you gave me some venom, you didn't mean to give me that. And that sounds crazy to say. A lot of times we call that Stockholm syndrome. When in fact, we just have to realize that everybody
Is who they are.
everybody's who they are.
Yeah.
We all have these preconceived notions, and most people, all people have toxic behavior that we have to break through, and everybody's not growing at the same rate. For instance, you and I were talking last night.
Yep.
Bryant, Pastor Stewart, is outside of my family, my best friend on the planet. And we are quite similar, but we're actually extremely different. So with that, we have some interesting conversations, and I disagree with him on most things, and he disagrees with me on most things. But we're able to meet each other and have real conversations because we respect each other's walk and each other's point of view and each other's past experiences. And I think that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, you have to meet individuals where they are.
Yeah.
That's a skill.
It
I have a question.
Ask.
It's off topic, but the question that I have, I've needed to know this, and I've never had an opportunity to sit down and talk to you. But with the way that things operate, once a person is tested and they find out that they're HIV positive for a virus,
I love that. She gonna keep
what happens? I say this because I've had personal experience years ago with the health department, and I received information as far as my health was concerned, and that was it. I was shown the door, and I asked the question, well, what is that? And they repeated the same thing they just said, with no information, no counseling, nothing. So what happens to a person when they receive the diagnosis of being positive for the virus? Is there a counseling set up for them? What happens for them?
I can tell you what's supposed to happen.
But let me answer that.
You want?
Go ahead.
When a person comes into the health department and be tested and the results are positive, they are counseled. And from the counseling section, they get another appointment
Okay.
to be put into care, to be referred to care.
Okay.
But we don't put, well, me personally, I don't refer individuals to care until I know that they're okay with their diagnosis first. So with me, I make sure the patient is okay. And if they're ready to be in care, because some people are not ready to be in care when they find out their diagnosis of a positive result. So that's why I say we have to meet people.
But there is some counseling.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's very good.
If you're
That's very
trained
good.
to
Where
do
they can get information.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good.
When you're trained to do that testing, you're also trained, you're supposed to be trained to counsel in that moment.
So what do you advise to someone who's having a crash and burn experience, per se, with the HIV diagnosis, that they don't want post-care prep or anything of that nature? How do you guys as professionals?
I was that guy.
Okay.
When I was diagnosed, I got into, like, I went through the motions of getting into care. I went to my appointments and all that kind of stuff. I was prescribed my meds, I was getting my meds. I didn't take them for 6 months. I had received all the information, but I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to take a pill every day. I don't want to have to go to these appointments every 3 months and then every 6 months after I finally get all my levels and stuff set up. There's got to be a better way to do this. And I tried. I was upset about it. And so when I've encountered people, of course I later got into care. I'm now undetectable. Yay. Since February 2014.
You know you've got to break down undetectable because that's a term of art.
Yeah, that I was about to say.
True.
I was about to say.
I will hop back into that. I will hop back into that. Don't even forget. But what I say to people now, when I've encountered them and testing them, in the past, I've come in contact with positive individuals, and when I've seen Diane come into contact with positive individuals and other professionals in the field who really care about the work, like she said, you meet them where they are. And if they don't want to get into care, then okay. Well, understand I'm gonna be calling you, here and there, checking in on you.
Okay. So you make multiple touches.
You work with them,
Okay.
and you communicate with them the way that they communicate.
That's a serious undertaking.
You assess their love
a
language.
while to ingest.
They can't pay us enough to do this work. you gotta have a passion for it. You gotta have a love for it, honestly, because like you said, it's an undertaking. You meet them where they are. So their love language may not be ours, that may not be our communication style, but then we acquire and we meet them with theirs, and we press.
So you become an unwanted therapist.
Basically.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people who don't want to get into care, if they don't want to get into care, they most likely also don't want to go to therapy. Every now and then they'll want to go into therapy, but most times they don't want to go to a counselor. They've built this connection with you, and you're the person they're going to call. And so it becomes really interesting. To go backwards to the undetectable question. Firstly, undetectable equals untransmittable. When one is undetectable, and help me with this, it means that your CD4 count, number one, is at a point where it is holding off the virus so well that your viral load numbers are below an amount that can be detected by a lab test. When that is reached, you ensure undetectable status. That means that when having sex, whether it's protected or not, it is impossible, if not next to impossible. When I say next to impossible, there's a 99.99%, and we have to do the 99.99% success rate because we've not found a case yet where it's been transmitted. In other words, it's impossible for you to transmit the virus to another individual via sex, unprotected. if you are in undetectable status. So that viral load, the HIV viral load count is below a number that can be detected on a lab test. Is that correct?
Correct.
Good deal. With that, I know we have to wrap this, but I want to thank you guys so much. Before we end this session, is there anything that, a quick message, maybe 15, 30 seconds, that you want to leave with the individuals who may be listening to this conversation?
One thing I think we talked a minute ago about having a parent to talk to, and we assume that the parent is someone that has the child's best interest at heart. I think we do need to acknowledge and maybe even give a suggestion to people who believe that they have a parent that does not have their best interest at heart, because that's a reality that we deal with. And we didn't say really anything about that. I think it's important to at least acknowledge it, and maybe going back to Brian's statement about trust, I believe that if for whatever reason you're in a position, and other people talk about this too, where your parent is not that person. I've discovered personally that in areas where my parents are weak, there is someone else in my life that has a strength in that area.
Yes, sir.
And I might need to expand my scope outside of my household.
Yes, sir.
But there is someone that I've met that loves me and will talk to me about anything and will take me wherever I need to go to get the care that's gonna help me save my life. I have to be willing to find that person, and I have to believe that that person exists. But I haven't met a person on this earth that doesn't have someone in their reach that loves them enough to make up the difference. When and if there is not a parent or guardian who can do that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
Because I have to remember that I so often speak from a place of privilege, and I don't really think about it as a privilege. The fact that I was blessed with the family that I was blessed with. Thank you. Anybody else? Before we wrap?
I want to bring up the table and show bread. Pastors, please have this conversation.
Yes.
Not just the abstinence conversation, not the protected sex conversation, not that we'll help you get don't just have those conversations as well. But for God's sakes, please encourage your congregants to have this conversation with their nieces and nephews if they don't have children, with their cousins if they are the biggest, oldest cousin, even the youngest, whatever it takes. If you have a position of influence in an organization that is nonprofit, that is mentor leadership, please have this conversation, because people die from this.
Unnecessarily.
Absolutely. People do not get married and live fulfilled lives. They do not engage for a lack of knowledge. And there's now places, people, prescriptions that will help you and help them continue life and see what they deserve as life continues, and not allow for this new enlightenment or new attachment to a community keep them from going further. Just want to encourage us to say that.
Thank you.
And to add to that, love yourself first. Love yourself so you can be a better person to someone else.
Yes.
So know your status. Even if you can't talk to nobody, take the responsibility for yourself to get tested so you'll know.
Know your status. It's so important. Get information. Understand the difference between the two.
Well, with that, thank you all so much. I would like to reiterate exactly what Pastor Stewart said. Pastors, community leaders, educators, business owners, parents, elders in the community, take it upon yourselves, not just to know your status or encourage people to know their status, but to get information. You also, he is speaking as one who is actually a part of an education program in regards to sexual health education and sexual health training. So it's important that pastors and community leaders have this information. Maybe you work in some type of civic position. Maybe sexual health is not necessarily your sphere of influence, but you are aware of certain people who need to have this kind of information. This is the kind of information that should be taught to those who work on the police force. Should be taught to EMTs. You may say no, but oftentimes they don't. Medical professionals oftentimes are not aware of this information. You go to school, and that's information we get, and we don't get anymore. So if you would just get the information, you get the information first. Take it upon yourself to learn and to have some conversations and to engage and to ask questions. Don't be afraid to not know anything in the room. Be the dumbest person in the room and soak it up. And I think that will empower you to better serve your communities. I want to thank each one of you, Chauncey, Diane, Pastor Stewart, Brian, Mommy, Jacqueline Battle. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Mr. McMichael, you and your company for filming this. And thank you all, the listeners and the viewers, for joining us. Like I said, hopefully you've been in the chat box right now, having conversations. We're in there with you. If you want more information on how you can join the I Deserve movement, of course, visit gallenbattle.org. That's GALLENBATTLE.org. And click that join mailing list and we'll get you enrolled there. If you are a pastor or a community leader, we have what we call the Pastors Roundtable. There's a sign-up form right there on the homepage of the website. If you want to get more information, if you want to enroll in some cultural competency classes so that you can get some information on how to better serve your community, we have that for you as well. Go ahead and visit gallenbattle, that's GALLENBATTLE.org. Scroll right on down past the Deserve announcement for this conference. And there's a blue tab right in there, blue section entitled the Pastors Roundtable. Sign up and join the conversation. We thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.